Look at that. That is quite a scene.
I think it's going to be bloody. Just remember, I have plenty of destroyed tanks out there for you guys if you want.
All right.
So,
Just as long as they're German.
hey guys, getting ready to set up the scenario for part of my gaming club that we're able to gather together this weekend. So, pretty excited about that. I think there's going to be like maybe 6 to 8 guys. I'm going to try not to play so that I can be the GM and make things run a little bit smoother. And it's just as fun to kind of run a game for guys as it is to play, as far as I'm concerned. So it's going to be a 1943 scenario, Eastern Front, Russians versus Germans. Probably earlier 43 than later 43. And basically, since it's spring, we're pretending like both armies have really been just reinforced, and so they're both getting ready to go on to the offensive, but they don't know that each other is going on the offensive. There's going to be some hidden setup here, which should make it pretty interesting, I think, for both players. So it's going to be hidden setup as far as the beginning. So I think I'm going to have the Germans set up first, and they'll set up everything, and it'll be mask, and then the Russians will come in and set up their side as well. The other thing is you can see that down the middle here, there's some red poker tokens. And so one of the things I thought about adding into this game is that each player on each side is going to roll a dice. They'll add their sides together. The number of pips that they total will be the number of adjustments they can make to these poker chips. And so they'll be able to kind of push and pull the starting line just to make it a little bit more interesting. I'll probably allow each side to also remove 1 victory point on the table. So you can see like little red pins that are out there on the table. Those are kind of victory conditions or markers. And so I'll have them remove those just to kind of change it all up a little bit and have the teams be a little bit more interested in what's happening. So like I said, it's a 43 scenario. So the Germans have lots of Panzer IVs, some Panzer IIs and 3s, and a few Tigers per player. There's a couple of units of Hanemags, so fully armored mechanized infantry here that the Germans will be able to move a little bit faster with. And then each German player will also have some artillery that they could possibly get each round. For the Russians, they're going to have basically a big, huge chunk of their mechanized brigades, tons of tanks, lots of T-34s, some Su-76s, and then some Lend-Lease Shermans out there as well, just because I don't have enough 34s to make it all 34s. So just to make it a little bit more interesting that way, they're going to have some Lend-Lease out there. So, don't know how long we're going to play. We're just going to play until guys got to start going home. But that's the plan. So we'll see if that's exactly how it goes to plan as we get started here. So pretty excited to play. It's been a while since I did a nice big World War II game. So the game begins with both sides rolling off to see who can gain some advantage as far as moving the front lines around on the table. So the Germans gain the advantage, rolling about 4 or 5 more moves than the Russian players do. So they're able to really push their front line out there and create a salient out around that town. So the Germans are pretty happy with their setup and feel pretty confident because they have a number of victory points on their side already. For the setup, I decided I was going to do this hidden setup sort of thing. So the Germans are going to stay here and actually begin to set up all of their troops behind this screen, and then the Russians will come in and do the same thing. The Germans pretty much set up all their troops evenly across the board, but they do really push their troops right up on that front line. So they're going to have troops in the open. And the same thing for the Russians. The Russians decide to deploy things right out in the open. So as soon as sunrise happens, they're going to see each other, and it's going to start, and it's going to be bloody. So tell me, what is the overall strategy of the Russians here? What you're thinking?
They're obviously an assailant. Okay, so they have a bit of a bulge, and so we're going to use our numbers and speed against them. So
Okay.
I'll kind of bog them down with our infantry, and then we have our fast movers on the outside and come around, and then put the pince move on them.
Okay.
Fold them in, spit them up.
See. Yep. All right. So, German players, what is your guys' overall strategy that you're hoping to achieve here?
We're
Any?
hoping that they get real excited about the town and
Okay.
take it over. Flanking here, reserve here, just a little bit something here, and then next waves are here.
Okay.
From my perspective, we have more victory points than them to start the game. So I'm setting up, protecting the victory points, setting up kill zones to say you got to come take one, or I'm going to win.
All right. The game begins with the Russian side taking their first movement. The Russian players decide that they're going to push forward along their entire front. They have stacked most of their infantry there in the middle, and so the Russian infantry begin to move into the town and get set up for an assault on the infantry and a couple of tanks that are located there. They also push outside the town and are able to really put some hard hits on the German troops that are out in the middle. So an entire tank battalion is lost by the Germans out there in the middle right off the bat, and it's not looking good for the Germans. They're able to knock out some tanks on the wings as well, and some of the tanks that are there on the other side of the town also. So the Germans really do kind of start off bad. However, their first turn back, they are able to really put a hurting on the Russian troops as well. They're able to knock out a number of troops, a number of tanks on the flanks. And so from this point on, it's going to be very hard for the Russians actually to gain their momentum. So these are tanks attacking each other in the open, so there's no saves. It's just hits and penetrating rolls to see if they're able to brew up each other's tanks. And unfortunately for the Russians, the Germans were able to roll their dice just a little bit better than they were. In the center, the battle continues to rage on, and more tanks are knocked out. On each flank as well, the Russians continue to lose their tanks, and it's their pincing move, their fast-moving tanks on the outside just continue to get whittled away. They still are able to push pretty heavily there in the center, but as you can see, the Germans have some reserves that they're able to bring up and slow down that advance. And so the Russians' plans to have fast movement on their flanks never really comes to fruition. One of the final death nails in the Russians' attack is that when the Russian infantry do finally make their attack on the town in the center, it does not go well. They lose almost an entire regiment of troops there in the center, and the Germans lose practically nothing in that assault. So it does not go well for the Russians in the center as well. So with the Russian flanks almost collapsing and disappearing, and the Russian center not really being able to punch through the town there, the Russians really began to go back on their heels. To add injury to insult, the German player close assaults some of those tanks on the flank that are left, and that pretty much wraps it up for the flank maneuver that the Russians had hoped for. The Germans continue to kind of hold their ground, and since they started off with more victory spots to begin with, they don't really have to do a lot of moving at this point. So as you can see, lots of tanks brewed up all across the board, but most of them are actually Russians. At this point, the Russians have really pretty much given up the ghost as far as their attack goes, and from here on out, the players just do some mopping up here to finish up the turns, but the Russian players are going to call it quits at this point. So It was a really fun game. Very interesting to see what both teams had as far as their strategy goes. Point wise, this was a very even game as far as Fistful of Tows is concerned. There was a little bit of difference, but not much. If anything, the Germans actually were down a little bit on points. But I think what sealed the deal for the Germans was they had a very strong starting position, gaining the advantage with moving the front line about as they did. And then also they were able to put more of the victory spots behind their lines. And so they really forced the Russians to have to move forward to take positions. And they were able to take more of a defensive position. And it just worked out way more to their advantage. So it was a really fun game and very enjoyable. Everybody had a lot of fun on each side. We will talk to you later. Thanks, guys.